Uh, two of our most successful dual career agents with us tonight that we're going to do a little Q&A with that I think will address a lot of the things that we've already started to touch on here casually. But for anybody who is on the Zoom, if you could just drop like top questions, challenges, concerns, frustrations, things that you'd like to hear our panelists talk about tonight, and then we will we'll make sure we get those at the end. But you guys are probably much better at introducing yourselves than I am, so we just love to know who you are, what your what led you to a career in real estate, what your dual career element is, and whether you are maintaining that or if you're trying to make your way to a full-time career in real estate.
So do you just want us to jump it right in with the first question then?
First question first.
Okay, basically what you just said.
Yep. Yeah, and I'll ask questions from the cheap seats here. That way, you guys, if you just want to riff, you don't have to like look at your notes or look at the next question.
Okay.
I'll moderate from the other side of the camera.
Perfect.
And in between bites of pizza.
Sure. Okay. So I'm Sara Troyer. I am on the Golden Group. We have how many agents now? Megan's on my team here. 15 agents. So I started doing this in 2018. I'm trying to not look at my notes, but also look at my notes because I wanted to do this in a thoughtful way. My background before I was a realtor was I worked in nonprofit for 10 years. So I did various things from crisis management with, kids, adults. I did some job training. I did some school presentations. So I've done kind of a whole gamut of different social related jobs. Yeah, and then I became a mom, and when I became a mom, I kind of threw some of that out the window, and I opened my own home daycare, and I watched kids in my house for 5 years. Eddie Golden, who runs my team, he was really annoyingly trying to convince me to become a realtor. Eddie, like that. He's so nice. He's like, man, you'd be so good at this. And you're kind of like, I was like, we were planning our 10-year high school reunion, and I'm like, I have a 6-month-old, and I just can't like mentally absorb doing that right now. And he's like, you'd be so great at it. You plan this and you plan that. And I'm like, yeah, maybe. So then Eddie showed me some houses and eventually sold us our house. We actually did a house swap with the people who bought our house. They bought our house. So we traded houses because Eddie is so like dynamic, and he told me like, I know some people who would really like your house, and I think you'd like their house, but they're not ready. And we went through this whole thing. So anyway, then it took him telling me, this was sometime in 2017, I think. He said, Sara, you sent me this person and this person and this person, and from those 3 sales, the people that you referred to me, you would have made $10,000. And I just kind of sat with that and said, oh, that's a lot of money that I'm putting into your pocket when like these people trusted me enough to take my recommendation. That means, they would trust me. So I decided I was going to take my classes. Then I got pregnant, and I sat for my exam when I was 9 months pregnant, like so pregnant. The lady was like, are you going to make it through this exam? And I was like, yes, thank you. And I made it. And then it was an easy, for you who are moms on the Zoom call here. I had an easy baby, an easy delivery, an easy recovery. So I was out showing houses 6 days later and got a listing within my first 2 weeks, and kind of felt, like I was living 2 lives, because when you're at home with a newborn and when you're out trying to do a business, it's like 2 totally different mindsets. So at that time I was still running my home daycare, and within 5 months I became very sustainable in doing real estate. 5 months in, I had sold 7 units and over $1 million in volume. So I decided to hang up my hat and just focus full-time full-time on real estate, which, as you know, depending on how long you've been in this, you have ebbs and flows, where some weeks it feels like you're working 100 hours and the next week it feels like you have nothing going on. So, so I'm doing this exclusively now. That's all I got, so. Let's see.
So I am Lindsey Freeman. It's my first time introducing myself as that. I just got married 2 months ago. I was licensed in October of 2020. I was in corporate retail before this for, probably 8 years. And when COVID hit, that all changed for retail. As many of you know, there was no retail. So I lost my job with that, ended up moving to Cleveland from Columbus. And I had always wanted to do real estate, but was scared of what that transition would look like. But when you're going from no income, something is better than nothing. So it was a good time for real estate. At that same time, I knew I needed insurance benefits. So I got a job at a local hospital here doing patient registration as well, part-time. So I've since transitioned from being at the hospital to doing at-home scheduling for patient registration. So I still do that part-time along with real estate. Real estate has been good to me year 2. I doubled my business from year 1. I capped this year for the first time. So it's going great. I still am holding on to the part-time job just for insurance purposes. But I do not love it. No, I do not love it at all. But it is great for insurance and flexibility. So I've kept it and I plan on transitioning out hopefully in the summertime this year, go full-time into real estate.
So building on, on how you guys got into real estate, success you had, there are between the people in the room and on the Zoom, some folks have been with the brokerage for 6 weeks, some with for 6 months, some for longer. From an expectation standpoint, right? Getting into real estate, the expectations versus the reality, right? So this maybe is a question we're answering for some newer people or some people who are licensed and ready to really hit it. Like, what were some of the biggest culture shocks? Or like, oh wow, I have to lead generate. Did not see that coming. What were the things that you wish you would have known as you made that leap?
So when I got licensed, I kind of went into it with the expectation of hoping to sell a house every 3 to 4 months to be some supplemental income or to kind of offset, other things in my household. In addition to my daycare business at that time, my mentality was, and somewhat still is, everyone knows a realtor. Everyone knows somebody who's in real estate. So that is a challenge. The challenge is reminding people that are in your sphere or that you're connected to why you are the best choice for their, real estate needs. This isn't always by, posting what you've sold on social media, because that can kind of get lost, I think, if you overdo some of those things, but developing the personal connections with relatable content, things, me being a mom, I try and put out some of the crazy mom stuff that all the moms are going to relate to. Everyone has some sort of niche that works for them, and stay relatable to your audience. And, as you're trying to obtain clients, I guess that would be my takeaways, I guess. So
For me, going into real estate, I didn't give 1 second of a thought of how you would get leads, like how you would get clients. Didn't think about it at all. So day 1, when it was like, oh, shoot, people are just going to come to me. I have to go out and find them. That was a hard transition for me, probably 6 months worth of brainstorming of what would work for me. Was it going to be picking up the phone? Was it going to be knocking on doors? Was it going to be holding events? What was it that worked best for me and my personality? And that really just took time to understand how I was going to get there.
Well, I want to add to that too, because Lindsey, when she started real estate, would work on our team. And I remember you doing a was it, you did something with dogs?
The pets, yeah.
The pet- okay, so you found something super relatable to you, your interest in pets, and like, when you had that idea, I was like, oh, that's really cool, like, I wouldn't have thought of that, because that's not where my mindset is, but it was something like really interesting and neat to see, you know,
Yeah.
you throw your own like creativity and
Yeah.
interests into it, so.
I think that's jumping ahead. One thing I learned is it has to be specific to you. It doesn't mean because you see someone getting on the phone and calling 9 to 11, no offense, I know that works for people. It didn't work for me, but it took me a while to learn that. So just because you're doing lead generation different from someone else doesn't mean they're not lead generating.
Yeah, can you talk a little bit more about what else you found, and Sarah, for you, what things that, whether it's from the daycare or from being a mom. Or
Yeah.
other exploits, like, where are you finding your leads? Because you guys are not just calling Visbo and expired listings every day. That's not what we do.
No,
It's a way to do it.
There's a way to do it.
yeah, I'm gonna just jump right down to this question that says lead generation is the core of your business when
Yeah.
you do it in home.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I know I have a note somewhere about this. So lead generation to me is a lot of things, most of which are maybe unconventional to some other people, but any opportunity, I think, to talk to somebody about what you do is lead generation. Lunch with an old coworker from a past job is lead generation. Play date at the park is lead generation. A lap around the building after you go to the gym, chatting with a friend is lead generation. It's, little things. So back right before COVID, I actually sponsored my early childhood PTA. And I think at that time, the sponsorship level was like $1,000 and you got your name on some party pamphlets or something like that. And, I made a lot of relationships that first few years in the PTA. And I remember very vividly a woman who we were at an event and her husband was there, and it's mostly moms that are at these events. And she's like, Jeff, his name is Jeff. She's like, Jeff, this is Sara. She's a realtor. We're ready to sell the condo. She's going to sell it for us. And like, I had no idea that she thought of me in that capacity. So I'm like, okay, cool. So last summer I sold their condo, and like that $1,000 sponsorship, which at the time I was like, this is kind of a lot of money. Is it really going to be worth it? Like, I made triple that in my commission selling one unit. So, it's not always about spending money, but sometimes it has to be about spending money. We also my neighborhood is very big on events and stuff. So I sponsor a ice cream truck every year at our 4th of July party. And we send out stuff like sponsored by the Golden Group, and my neighbor who's also on my team, like we sponsor it together. And I've got several neighborhood clients that way too. So
Well, I think let's, before we jump to Lindsey, let's build on that a little bit, because there are countless, and if you haven't been, you will be soon inundated with opportunities to, pay $250 for your name on this thing, or $1,000 to sponsor the church bulletin or whatever it is. But your follow-up on that was being present, being
Yes.
visible, capturing the information and having a conversation.
yes, I get calls all the time, as I'm sure everyone else does, about putting my name on a grocery cart or in the CVS doorway or whatever. And that's all great and novel, but I know for me and for most people, that's not going to work because there's no personal connection there. So, whatever your, hobbies, interests, outside skills and talents are, like, zero in on those things and really like figure out a way, how can I be recognized here, or how can I remind people here what my other job is, that, oh, I own a pizza shop, but I'm also a realtor. You kind of have to just sneak it in there whenever you can.
I do real estate first and then say, something about the pizza shop.
Yeah, I've been sitting here turning my wheels for you, like, how can he like use his pizza business to develop, like, I've been like already trying to think of some strategies for you.
CMA, every time you deliver a pizza.
Yeah.
you give,
Yeah, a
Yeah,
little
exactly.
postcard, like, here's what your neighborhood houses are selling for, like, if you,
Yeah.
I delivered you a good pizza, I'm gonna deliver you good real estate, sir, like, there's so much right there, yeah.
Talked to a lot of people.
That's great. Let's talk a little bit about what you do.
Yeah, so for lead generation, just off the top of my head, like 3 things I was working on this weekend alone. I am doing buyer seminars this year. I did one last year and it was very successful. I had 3 buyers, 2 of them closed with me. So I'm gonna do 1 a month this year, do January through June. I put together marketing for them, set up Eventbrite. Next week, I'm gonna work on actually physically marketing them. So I'm doing that. For me, I've just learned over the past 2 years that when I'm in front of people, it's much better. Kind of like what Sara was saying, it's personal connection. It's not just the random ad or something like that. It's when I can connect with people on an individual basis when things turn for me. Open houses are really big for me. I try to do 3 to 4 a month. I normally do a game in them. I'm revamping my game just because I'm simply bored of it. No one else knows, but I'm bored of it. So I'm redoing all of like my marketing and all of that for my open houses. And then gosh, what else am I doing? Open houses. This is why we need notes.
Mm-hmm.
1 second.
Your open house games looks really fun, I remember seeing.
I love playing games for open houses because it's memorable for people.
Did you hide something in the house?
Yeah, I do a
Okay.
scavenger hunt.
Scavenger hunt.
Yes. Oh, and then desserts for dessert drop off. So for everyone in my sphere that has purchased with me over the past 2 years, I just prepped all the desserts this weekend and I'm going to do little dessert drop offs over the course of the week. Really simple. It costs $50. Got containers off the Dollar Tree. Very easy, but I'm going to go stop by, say hello, see how their house is and move on.
I think
So,
that's a great point too, is like, once you've closed with a client, like, continue to follow up with them.
Yes.
It's not a one and done. People, I don't know, Mike probably has some sort of statistic on how often people move. Is it like 5 to 7 years or
Yeah,
7 to 9? Okay. So, 7 to 9 years can be a long time, but it also cannot be. I've had 2 houses already that I've sold to them as buyers and then resold them as sellers, not for great circumstances, they both got divorced, but, it's like you're in a position in this where you kind of sometimes benefit off of other people's misfortunes. And it's tricky to navigate some of those scenarios. It's death, it's, divorce, it's job loss. Yes, there's a lot of things there that are challenging. But it's important to stay in touch with those people. So when they're ready and going through whatever they're going through, good, bad, or indifferent, they remember you. I do a ornament. So everyone who bought with me this year, I have a custom ornament made with their address on it, and I drop those off sometime in the next 20 days.
Well, let's think about that because for folks in the room who, maybe they've had a couple of closings or whatever, it's like, is there any reason you couldn't do the same thing with just your sphere of influence?
No,
To make sure that they know, they think of you as a realtor at the very least, if not their realtor.
I'm doing it with a couple of people that didn't fully transact with me, but that I had sit down meetings with, that I would hope to close in the future, but just wanted to stay top of mind. So,
Right.
I feel like anyone that you just want to stay top of mind to, you can do that with.
Yes, because I think for, as a new agent, sometimes it feels like, oh, once I've done like 20 deals, then I'll do 200, which is very true. Right, but there's no reason to treat future clients any different than past clients with an opportunity.
Yeah, and if you think like, oh, none of my friends and family are going to buy or sell, you don't know who they know. So even like my clients, I'm not necessarily trying to get their business in 7 years. I'm trying to say, hey, here's this. They might go to a holiday party and think of me if someone says something about real estate. So you're just trying to stay top of mind to people that you know.
There's something on the screen. It's boxes. I don't know what it says. That's a great point too, because I had a listing this summer and sold the house. It was quick close, cash deal, like really simple. And then like 2 weeks later, I got a phone call randomly, and you know, when you get random phone calls, you're like, do they want to sell me health insurance or get me to join their team at Century 21 or, she was like, oh, my friend just told me that her sister sold their house with you and we want to sell my mom's house. When can we sell it? Like, not even I'm interviewing 5 agents. It was like, they had a relationship enough with that person who told them they used me and it was great that they're like, can we sign the papers like tomorrow? I'm like, okay. Yeah, okay. Not gonna say no.
So jumping,
Can I ask a question?
yeah,
Lindsey, when you said you do like 3 to 4 open houses per month, those ones, you know, those are other agents?
Yeah,
So-
typically.
So what's your, like, how do you find people who are looking to open houses? Or you, like, I see people on the Facebook, our Wayne's Facebook website saying, hey, so what are available to do now?
Sometimes for that, but typically what I'll do is I'll look at our new listings in the MLS and then I will just text people,
Okay.
text agents and say, hey, I see you have blah, blah house in Lakewood. Do your sellers want to open house? I'd love to take it off your hands this weekend. And I just like go for hard close. I'll say,
Yeah,
do you prefer Saturday 10 to 2 or Sunday, whatever.
the assaulted close,
I like that.
yeah, and so for anyone who, like, so you just go onto the MLS, you search listed by the office ID, that's it?
And they're like a different color and it's in our office too, when you look them up,
You
right?
can
Like
too,
if you're
yeah.
just, if you only wanted to do Westlake, you know,
Yeah.
you can search Westlake and the
Yep.
blue, I think it's blue one
Yeah.
for our office.
You can filter, like I'll filter by price point, sometimes or area, like what side of town I want to stay on and whatever, but I'll just text people and.
Cool. Thank you.
Mhm.
Yeah, great question. So, one of the questions in the chat, and one that we expected and have prepared for is around this mythical skill set around time block. Right, so individuals who are fully and solely realtors struggle to find the time to do the job. How is it that you do it with so much else going on, or somebody else dictating what time you can do this?
I think it's really hard. I think that anyone says it was easy would be completely lying. I think that I do a couple of things. First of all, we only have so many hours in a day. So if you work your 9 to 5 and then you have to deal with kids and, you know, there's bedtime, you might have an hour of time. Okay. So what I try to do is when I map out my slots of times I have, I try to prioritize what are the most important tasks that I can get the most bang for the buck out of. So I do this in a couple of ways. I am pretty OCD, so this might be a little bit too much of a system for people, but I write out my to-dos monthly of what real estate to-dos I need to accomplish. So for me, I changed my name this month. So I need to order new business cards. I need to order new signs. I need to coordinate the dessert drop-offs, whatever it may be. And I'll write it all down in a list. And then I plot it out. So I work part-time, you know, it's easier than working full-time, but I plot out on my days off what tasks I'm going to do. So I know exactly when I look at the week, what I can accomplish. It's not overwhelming because I'm not looking at a full list of 20 things. I'm looking at 3 things a day. And I just really try to stick to that. And if I don't get to it, I know it's going to roll over to the next day, which is fine. But I really just try to prioritize, again, what are the biggest tasks that are going to have the most value in the time blocks that I have, and just try to map that out in advance. I didn't do this at first, and what would happen is I would get stuck looking at a big list and I would just get overwhelmed and I would end up doing nothing because it seemed too overwhelming of even a place to start. So I think breaking it down into smaller steps and really pre-planning it out even monthly has really helped me.
That's
A lot.
a lot, yeah. I mean, I like it, but it gives me anxiety thinking about it. A word that you said that I also had already written down as a note is priorities. So I look at it as priorities is both the most important and the least important word when you're working in real estate, because I know for me, it's essential to survive mentally, to prioritize myself and my family. But the burnout, you know, the burnout level is real if you're always accommodating clients. Lindsey and I were just talking before we came in here about a client she had who was, fire blasting her on her bridal shower day. Like, it's, some people will respect those things and some people will not respect those things. So you can't always accommodate your clients, but I know that it's essential for survival as a realtor to drop things sometimes. And you are kind of the captain of the boat of when you're gonna drop things and when you're gonna hold to, no, I can't show you this today, but I can show you this tomorrow or the next day or whatever it is. But I fully accept that I have to sometimes shift those priorities, to keep my clients, make my clients happy. I have to miss the cookout to write an offer. I have to miss the football game to show a house. And it's a constant compromise, and also accepting that not everyone always is going to be happy with you. Even if you are bending over backwards, some people don't see it, value it, appreciate it, understand your sacrifices, and you just kind of have to zip it and move on, and go along your business, because they're just, some people aren't going to get it. I guess with the time blocking part of this question, I kind of wrote, for me, it's cyclical with the ebbs and flows of the market. Like right now, my business is very slow. 6 months ago, I was like, not even able to come up for air. So I've done it long enough though to know that ebb and flow is normal. And just because you're slow and haven't shown a house for a couple weeks or whatever, it doesn't mean you're failing, or, but you're also like, where's that next paycheck going to come from? Because it's a very, a real worry sometimes. So, my routine, and I'm kind of talking to maybe the moms right now who are on the chat, daily during the week, I get my kids on the bus, and I kind of thrive on that, like knowing that I'm there to do that for them. And then I can kind of plan my day from there. For me, for my mental health, I need to make time to exercise, and then I spend time on work tasks for whatever chunk of time I have left of the day. And that can be stuff like continuing education, setting appointments, buying gifts, social media planning. My appointments, evenings and weekends, are kind of when most people want those, and that's what I time block appointments for, unless, there's always exceptions. So
how do you make that decision of, I need to prioritize me in this situation versus I need to prioritize me? Like, is there a progression? Is it, because I imagine there are times at the end of a really long day where you still make the decision to prioritize the business.
I think a lot of this is about the client. You're going to have those clients who are going to have high expectations and be like, I just had one yesterday who I was talking to, and they're like, well, if we see something, we're going to be like, let's go see it right away. And they're still working on their pre-approval. And I'm like, so let's get this pre-approval part figured out first before we run out and go look at a house. I have another client who I was talking with Lindsey about, that I've been working with this guy for like 3 years. And I think he just likes to have someone to hang out with, like during the week. And I haven't heard from him for a while. I think I might've made him mad, because I don't want to get into that, but for him, if he's like, hey, I want to see this house, I'll be like, okay, I've got free time on Wednesday. Or, I kind of give it to him, like, this is when I can go, because I'm not really sure he's ever going to buy a house. But, you kind of have to base it off of the client, and also off of, there's family things or personal things that you're like, okay, I can miss my workout today, or I can miss this or that, but like, I'm not going to miss my daughter's play, so it's that sort of priorities, I guess.
Do you, Lindsey, you're gainfully employed outside of real estate at the moment. Does it ever come up? Do your clients know? Do they care? Do you tell them, or you just say like, oh, I'm in appointments?
It doesn't exist to them. I do not tell them at all. I say I have an appointment. No one's ever questioned me on it. My thought is they think I'm probably busy. I don't know. I don't really care what they think, but even if it's just I have dinner with my husband tonight. I just say, I have an appointment until 6, I could be there at 6:30. They don't have to know what that appointment is. You don't have to say, oh, I'm so sorry, I had this dinner planned, I have this to do. The only time I've ever said that, is when I feel like it's more of an urgent situation that someone needed to see a house, and I couldn't be there, and I had to say, listen, this is what I have going on. It's literally my bridal shower. I'm not going to be able to be there that day. But other than that, they don't know I have another job. I don't talk about my other job. I'm fortunate that I can still answer the phone with my other job if I need to, so it's never been an issue. But they just think I'm in another appointment.
Do you manage your energy differently on the days that you're working, or do you allocate like, okay, I know I'm not gonna wanna do this after 8 hours of scheduling patients?
Yeah, I try to keep all my real estate work on real estate days. I will take an hour typically in the mornings. If I'm busy, so if I'm writing offers, if I have a lot of stuff going back and forth, I will take an hour in the mornings for emails and catch up with like paperwork essentially, or calling people before my hospital days. But other than that, I try to keep real estate on real estate days besides like buyer appointments or someone needs something urgently.
I'm gonna answer the part of that too, because I had a note here.
Yeah.
The number one thing people say to me is, oh, I'm sorry, I know you have kids, or I'm sorry, I hear your kids in the background, or you're probably with your family, or you're probably cooking dinner, or those sort of things. It's a lot of, I'm sorry, I'm sorry to bother you kind of stuff, which I appreciate, but then my response always to them is, yes, I am with them, or yes, I am cooking dinner, but part of my job is being available for you and putting things on pause here. So you have my attention. You know, I think it's like rebutting those, even though they're like apologetically interjecting with something, you know, you're kind of thinking maybe they're a little hesitant to call me or ask me or bother me. And I'm like, please ask me questions whenever you have them, because I'm available for you. So even if that means I'm muting the phone and mouth yelling to my kids to be quiet, or locking myself in the bathroom, I'm giving them my attention.
Yeah, that's interesting, you know, the way you describe that reminds me of what I think, we'll all probably hear a lot of in the coming months, because as the market begins to shift, right? It doesn't shift the same for everyone individually, but the total market will, you know, there will real estate be in the news, and oh, you know, home sales are down 20%. Your friends, family, colleagues, whomever you're talking to will be like, oh, geez, it's tough out there, right? Similar to how somebody might say, oh, I'm so sorry, you must be so busy, or I don't mean to bother you while you're doing X, Y, Z. You know, we have to control and correct that narrative to let them know, like, hey, you know, not everything you hear on TV or on the radio is necessarily true or accurate or specific to what I'm able to help you do as your. That's great. Let's see, we just kind of hit the objection one. I guess let's just flesh it out. Like, you say your clients don't know when you were running when you had the in-home daycare and you were selling real estate. Like, did it ever come up? Become an issue? What would you say if it did?
I mean, I think kind of what Lindsey said, like, I have an appointment, or, you know, I'm available. Like, I think it's mostly important to just say, I'm available from this time to this time, or on this day, I can do the morning, on this day, I can do the evening. Like, I'm flexible, let me know what works for you, but giving, you know, options and times, because if you just are coming back saying, no, I can't do that, but not engaging in any sort of other follow-up or trying to make it right. You know, it goes back to the basics of customer service of, you know, this is what the problem is. We can't make this time work. I'm going to offer solutions before they're even worried or concerned about it. You know, being able to offer solutions, I think, is a huge skill as a realtor that you need in so many ways. So many ways, and there's usually a solution to every issue, but no.
And I just say it up front, like in my buyer consultations, I'll say, you know, I will make every effort to be available at some point during the day if you need to see a house immediately. You guys kind of have an advantage right now. We're not in the crazy market of a year and a half ago where you did have to see a house that day. So it might not be as big of a deal to see, hey, I'm available between 5 and 7 tomorrow night. What's good for you? But like Sarah said, giving a time that you are available and not just saying, hey, I'm in an appointment. That's what I always do as well.
It is interesting, like when you consider scheduling an appointment anywhere else with anyone else, right? You're doing it on their time, right? And because there's been this urgency, maybe, we forget that. But you can very easily say, like, you know, and be reassuring.
Yeah.
And just like take a doctor, right? So you schedule an appointment for a doctor, and it's like, you know, my tooth was cracked, and the dentist was like, "Oh, we're 10 days out," right? Yeah, right. But if it's like, you know, my jaw's unhinged,
Yeah.
like there's an emergency scenario.
Right.
What do you do in like an emergency scenario if, you know, it's your bridal shower? Like, how do you leverage other agents? Do you, you know, Sarah, you have a team, you talk maybe a little bit about that support, but like, what do you do in those emergency scenarios where it's like, yeah, they gotta see a doctor right now?
Yeah, for me, I mean, I've had people show houses a couple of times when I couldn't get out of work or a different obligation. Just agents I've made relationships with, ask if they can show the house for you. I think creating agent relationships is key, especially when you're a dual agent, so you have people to rely on if you can't be there. So doing that, and then just, you know, sometimes you have to do it. Like I did write an offer the morning of my bridal shower because I had to. So just know that, you know, it is a little bit tougher being a dual career agent because you don't have unlimited time as other people do. And you just have to know, you have to have kind of the backbone, knowing that you're going to have to make some sacrifices going into it.
I think, dual career or not, this is one of the few jobs where people kind of expect you to be on demand. And that's challenging because yes, you want to be available and make yourself available, but also you need to, like, again, prioritize yourself, and you can't, you know, be running so ragged that, you know, you're not productive in every area. But when you know, the only times I'm really not available or don't make my, you know, I can't be available is when I've been out of town on vacations and I've been on a team. I've had, I can show houses for me when I've been out of town, you know, like I can't express, I guess, enough my appreciation for the support that being on a team brings in those sort of situations. Like, my kid's sick today. Can anyone run out and do the showing? My buyer has to get in today. And, you know, having a team where you have a relationship with 15 other people, normally we don't have a problem with somebody stepping up and saying, yeah, let me know the details, I can do it. And that's really kind of an invaluable, I think, asset for somebody who either is a dual agent or juggling this with a family at the same time. It's just really, you know, can't say that enough, I guess.
Yeah, and then for anybody who's not on the team or not exploring that, you know, throwing the Hail Mary on the Facebook group never fails as well. Or, I mean, I think that both of you, as you both said, like building those agent relationships, whether it's on your team or just with each of you next to each other. I think all three of you are linked with, right? And so, you know, there's an opportunity there that it's just like, oh, it doesn't work for me, maybe it works for them, and so on and so forth. So I think that there's a lot of value in that.
And I think creating agent relationships for those type of things, but also just for brainstorming. If you're an individual agent, like you three could get together once a month and just talk about your challenges or what's working for you. Like, it's okay to share. No one's going to do it exactly the same as you. So creating that, I have 4 or 5 agents that I talk to weekly, probably just bouncing ideas off of, 4 or 5 questions. Just creating that network for yourself if you're an individual agent is helpful as well.
So you, is it 4 years for you, Sarah?
Over 4, I'm going into my 5th year.
Well,
Yep.
your 5th year, you're going into your 3rd year, right? I think.
Yep.
So top things that you're doing now, things that you're saying, doing, thinking, feeling, whatever it is, that's a behavior or activity that you picked up that you're like, oh my God, why was I not doing this 24, 48 months ago?
So I would say being strategic and sticking to the plan, thinking like a business owner versus an entrepreneur. I took bold this past year and I feel like that was what I came out most with it, is treating this like I would a business. And I related that a lot back to my corporate days. So in those days I would have a plan, I would have monthly goals. I would break it down like that. So why wasn't I doing that for my own business? So that changed a lot for me when I started treating it like a business and not just something that I was doing and the business would come to me. But I had measurable, specific goals too, just like I would run any other business.
My thoughts on this question in regards to wishing I started to do it sooner is working on your downline and how important that can be for your passive income. You know, not only you want to have conversations with people about why you're a great realtor, why they should use you, not directly, but you know, just through building relationships, but you also want to talk with people about why they might enjoy real estate. You know, this is one of the few industries I think where you kind of in some ways are welcoming your competition because, you know, to the point, you know, collaborating with somebody, you're going to all do something differently. You're going to all have different relationships with different people. And yes, you know, you're getting more competitors by encouraging people to become realtors, but you're also, you know, developing relationships and setting yourself up for, you know, potential extra income by getting those people into your downline. So.
That's excellent. Love that. Love for career night. The 19th.
Bring your
12th in
friends.
Bever Pike, the 19th in Rocky River. I'm gonna pop to some of the questions from the chat. I think some of these we hit, but I just want to circle back to them and make sure that, you know, we got everyone the answers they're looking for. One person said it's challenging to find help as a new solo agent, like juggling some of those things. And shout out to Lindsey, you apparently helped Jill Brown on an occasion or two, but just want to revisit that. Anything else you'd recommend for finding help or putting yourself out there to help other people and just create opportunities for yourself?
I think being in office, it's hard being a dual career agent to find even a spare moment, but even if you have an hour on your day off or whatever it may be, just to be able to put names to faces and create those relationships. I really didn't have that until I started coming in the office. And honestly, I don't do it frequently because I don't have time, but that helped me create those relationships so I could be able to do that. And going to events, so going to the business planning clinic or going to any like summer mastermind. I think that's where I met Jill. Anything like that where you can get out and meet people. Oh, and if you need more advance notice, I have in the past like reached out to Julia and been like, hey, when is the business planning clinic? So I know I can take that day off work. So if you need that, if you run into that challenge being dual career that you can't get off work in time, email the ladies, they will tell you in advance, more in advance than when the calendar comes out, so you can be prepared for those.
Yeah, we already have, I think we're just about to start planning the first quarter of 2024.
Yeah.
This is, I mean, we've had the dates for most things.
Mhm.
You know,
Yeah,
might
I know.
move a little bit, but we at least know what time it's gonna be, right? Anything to add there, Sarah?
Yes, I don't think it specifically relates to this question, but one thing that you made me think of something is knowing that when you're doing transactions with other agents, how important it is to maintain, at least for yourself, a good relationship with them. You'll deal with, you know, I don't know the room if you've done one transaction or 10 or 100, but you're going to deal with probably the same agent again at some point in the future. And, you know, making sure that, you know, you're just building a good rapport with those people. Cause I have friends at other brokerages even that I've worked with a few times now who I'll call up and say, hey, like, do you have any listings coming up in this area? Cause I know you sell a lot here, and just kind of not taking for granted those relationships that you can build with other realtors and how it can be helpful to your business. Especially if you're an agent on your own, like the compliment Lindsey got is, you know, someone's always looking for somebody else to bounce an idea off of. So.
as it is for most people, there are a couple questions in the chat about leads, right? No one ever feels like they have enough leads, but just, the question is very simply, tips for getting leads. So let's revisit that. I know we touched on it briefly, but just revisit from a standpoint of what does it look like for us to get more leads?
I would say I have an advantage here in this scenario because I'm from here. I've lived here my whole life, whereas somebody who maybe has relocated from another area might not have as big of a sphere or as many connections. That's not to say that, lead generation is always easy because of my previous statement that everyone knows someone who's a realtor.
At least.
At least one. But that, going back to what I said also earlier, is like volunteer, do things that even if you don't want to do them right now, or you like going to that party with your spouse or, somebody like you all know what that's like when you're like, oh, I committed to this, but I really don't want to do it. I just want to sit in my pajamas and watch Netflix tonight. But like, go and have those conversations with people and do those sort of things. That's, to me, your best lead generation source, is getting out there and interacting with people even when you don't want to. I have a client who was a lead that called me 2 years ago from, I don't know, it was a Zillow lead or something. And I showed them a house for her daughter. We chatted for a few minutes. It was nothing to me in terms of being remarkable. 2 years later, she called me and just remembered our interaction that we had and said, we want to buy land. I wanted to call you first because I remembered how nice you were or how good of a conversation we had. And I'm like, wow, it's the little things like that you take for granted. Like, I really had a meaningful enough conversation 2 years ago when I was probably like, oh, another lead. And like, I don't want to, and they remembered and called. So it's kind of hard because sometimes you can get discouraged with leads and if they're going to amount to anything or be valuable, but go out and show that house, even if you think probably wasting my time. Like, you get discouraged, but if you keep working hard, the benefits will eventually be there and pay off.
I think 2 points on that. One, you have to find leads in a way that you like. I spent probably 9 months calling expires or struggle prospecting, and it just didn't work out for me. I didn't enjoy it, which is probably why it didn't work out for me. I dreaded doing it every day. I would put it off. Other things would take priority. And so I really had to reevaluate to do what I loved, which is being in front of people. So doing the open houses, doing events. So at the end of the day, you have to really evaluate yourself and find what you like to do. And that's going to be your best lead source. And kind of what Sara spoke on, I'm not from here. I thought I didn't have a sphere at all. I remember people telling me to write down on my sphere, and I'm like, I know 3 people here. Like, what's that going to do? However, the majority of my business has come from my sphere, ironically. And it's because those 3 people, you talk to them and they have a cousin, or they have a neighbor, or they have a friend. And so even if you feel like you don't know people, you know more people than you think you do. And it's really cultivating those relationships that you're top of mind when someone else they know thinks of real estate.
So if I'm gonna put together what you guys said, is you gotta pick a couple things that you like to do and will do.
Mhm.
And then maybe pick one thing that you don't necessarily like to do, but it's good for you, right? Like, if medicine tasted good, we don't put cough syrup on pancakes, but it doesn't, so we don't, right? But it doesn't have to be miserable.
Yeah.
Right? So if you're miserable, if it hurts, you're doing it wrong, it doesn't feel good, you're probably not doing it.
Correct.
Nice. Yeah, but
How do you convert that? Are you converting on the phone, or are you meeting leads in person?
I always have in-person meetings. So if someone calls me, I had someone call me today that wanted to see a house. I personally, for lots of various reasons, time, safety, everything, I won't go to a random house with a stranger unless I've had a face-to-face meeting with them or if they're already pre-approved. Just my personal policy. But typically I'll have sit down face to face. I'll say, hey, see, buyer, you're interested in this house, that's great. Let's find time in the next day or two to sit down. I'll buy you a cup of coffee. Let's talk to you a little about me and about the buying process. And then we'll have a conversation. If it's a seller, I'll go to their house, see the house, have a seller consultation, but I typically will have a meeting. At the very least, have a pre-approval if they don't want to have a meeting. It'll save you time in the end. And safety. Mhm. Doesn't have to be anything fancy. I think I had downloaded mine on command. I think I've since changed it multiple iterations, but create the general presentation. No, I typically will just pass it to them and say, this is for your information. And then I just talk through the questions, this is what they're looking for in a home. What kind of stuff.
Especially if you're dealing with first time home buyers, they might not truly understand the process. So why pre-approvals are important.
And I had people push back, like people that said, oh no, I bought, people I sold house to a couple of houses ago, they said, well, we've bought before, we don't need to sit down. I said, well, every process is different. This is a different market than 2 years ago. I'd love to just spend 10 minutes before we look at a house and talk through what the market is like now.
So, I don't want to lose a really clever point there, which is like, you're gonna go see 2 or 3 houses, you're just gonna have coffee ahead of it.
Yep.
Right, and if they're not willing to have that conversation, then they just want to look at the house.
Exactly.
And a realtor to get a bed,
That was like my conversation this morning. She got very mad at me that I would not just go to a random house
Yeah.
with her without a pre-approval or a meeting. And in my mind, that's just someone that's not very serious about buying anyway. So
Yeah.
not worth my time.
I fully appreciate what Lindsey does. However, I do it differently. I will, if say you get a lead somehow, a message from somebody, a referral, whatever, I will reach out to that person. I will have a phone. I'll say, let's set up a phone call because I think 2 things. I think we're in an age where so many people rely on just texting and messaging and stuff, but so much gets lost in that. And it's hard to like assume or accept that someone's just going to be your client because of some messages you have back and forth. I want to hear their voice, like get all, talk to them, answer any questions they might have about me or how the process works. I kind of try and explain some of the very simple basic parts, like the pre-approval, like you can't drive home enough, that's so important. So I will just say, hey, let's schedule a phone conversation. And given that most of the time my leads are from people who I know who it's, so, on top of that, I would say that if I get a call from somebody or a client or friend, anyone who says, we want to go see this house, the first time, it's like a get out of jail free card to me. It's like, okay, if we're not fully there, not ready, not pre-approved, I'll take them out to go and see, just to further foster that relationship, to be available, to be, show them that I'm ready and I'm there, and then kind of go through all right, well, now we saw this house, what some things about this price point have or don't have. Let's get you hooked up with a lender to get a pre-approval. And then kind of we can figure out what your budget is, because I'd hate to take you to a house that you love and you can't afford it. Or I'd hate to take you to a house, back when it was super, super competitive 6 months ago, that you're not pre-approved, and by the time we get an offer in, it's too late. So I don't want those things to happen to you. And that's kind of the language that I get when they're resistant to that process. But I'll always go at least the first time, and then kind of it's on them to start working on the next steps before we go out again, I guess. First date, leave them wanting a little more.
You say first date?
First date.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
Can't,
I think
can't
that-
give it all away.
Yeah, that's very true, and I think taking the dating analogy, like, part of it is like, at some point you have to define the relationship,
Mhm.
right? And that's what, you want it up front or after, dates or whatever, but like, the one thing you both did very well, that I think is important for all dual career agents to keep top of mind, is why it's very beneficial for you that things happen on your schedule, and that there's a pre-approval and that we've met ahead of time. But then as both of you were talking, you were framing it in a way that it's valuable to them, right? Whether they bought a home 30 years ago, or they just started thinking about it 3 months ago, like, there is an opportunity for education, right? And coming from contributions to our clients and saying like, hey, I don't want you to do this, or hey, you know.
Market's different.
Right. Yeah, and so I think that's good, so even if it's like, you know, you can't show it because it's, you know, you're working that day, like, what is the framework that allows that client to think like, oh, well, this is good for me? You know?
Yeah.
Great, anything that we haven't covered that you are thinking like, oh yeah, this is really powerful, or really important for folks in a dual career environment?
The one thing that I didn't read yet, that we didn't talk about yet, in terms of balancing, like continuing to work after a long day, or, you know, how do you combat that kind of feeling?
The fatigue.
The fatigue, yeah, like how do you get it all done with everything you have to do, which is challenging. My situation is unique now that my family is my competing job. Some things are flexible, some things aren't. But after putting my kids to bed is sometimes my most dedicated, quiet work time. And sometimes it's not. So I think you just capitalize on those creative juices when they're flowing. And, you know, Lindsey was saying like, everything's an appointment. So, you know, kind of be like, go to the library and have an appointment, or do whatever you need to do to like, get your tasks, get through your task list, or get through whatever you're doing, but give yourself grace at the same time. You know, tonight I'm doing XYZ, I'm plugging through a whole list. Tomorrow I'm going to sit on the couch and have snacks and watch trash, and that's okay. Like, let yourself have that. I think it's also really important on the burnout piece. Every day, put your phone away from you for 30 minutes. No, it doesn't have to be more than that, or it could be a couple times, like you want to be available, but walk away from it and go do something else, because you can get so stuck in that, you know, plugging through a list and tasking and social media and worrying about texting everyone back immediately. Like, that's my, I guess, strength and weakness kind of thing when those interview questions come up, is because like, I feel like I need to do it right now. So if I drop my phone for 30 minutes on the counter, I walk away, or I go outside with my kids or whatever, I feel better, like it's a stress reducer. So like, please do that. Try and do that if you don't do that, because it's good for your mind.
I was gonna say the same thing. You gotta give yourself grace. Like, if you've had a long day at your 9-to-5 job and you were supposed to do 2 real estate tasks and you're too tired to, that's okay. Just reposition them to a different day. It's okay. It doesn't always happen. I don't get everything done every day. You're not going to either. And like Sara said, specifically, I got very busy this summer, and I realized I was answering client calls at 10 p.m. about nothing that was important, or emails at that time. And I was like, I can't do this anymore. So I put time limits on my phone between 9 p.m. and 7 a.m. I don't answer unless I'm like negotiating a deal or something super important. I don't answer. They'll see that my phone is silenced, and I'll answer them in the morning, but I just don't do it anymore. So you have to be able to you have to give yourself time to yourself and not be on 24/7, or you will burn out.
What else? Anything that we didn't cover that you had?
That was it.
Just another question dropped in the chat. Just any other ways to market yourself or raise awareness that you're a realtor outside of social media, right? Are you know, is it just the hand-to-hand conversations so important?
Yeah, I think face-to-face, getting yourself, I did a bridal event this spring, doing open houses, anything that you can think that you would be interested in, like Sarah said, volunteer at your church, volunteer at your kid's school. Wherever you can put yourself in a place where you'll be in front of people, I think is the best.
Great.
I have a question, because I think that like, that seems obvious, right? But there are maybe some among us, right? I was this way once, where like you're a secret agent, right? Like you haven't done any business, so you don't want to tell anybody you're a real estate agent, because God forbid they ask for your help and you don't know what the hell to do. How do you overcome that? What's your unique value proposition if you've only sold a couple homes? Like what's your offering?
I think you have to fake it until you make it. I never told people that this is my first, well, I was lucky that my parents were my first one, so I got that at my phone easily. But even after that, my third, fourth, I didn't say I'm a new agent or I don't know the answer to your question because I'm new. I would just say, let me get back to you on that and ask someone. My first buyer and seller presentation, I use company stats. They don't know. They don't know. They don't know. They don't even basically read it. It's just something down on a piece of paper. So rely on company stats, team stats if you're on a team before you get your individual business proposition.
Fake it till you make it is 100%. Like, I remember very vividly my first transaction and the agent texted me and said, "Where's the ROC?" And I'm like, what does this mean? So I text Mike Caston right away. I'm like, Mike, what's an ROC? I have no idea. What do they want? Like, am I gonna get sued? Like, you're just like, you worry the first, like, at least 10 houses you sell that somebody's going to sue you.
I still worry about that.
Yeah, at least, I said at least 10. So, more depends. So like, I think there are people who always will doubt you or will, kind of be cruel with, how many houses have you sold or like, those sort of things. I remember also my first year, I think this guy was drunk. I showed him a house, I wasn't by myself, but he was like, "How long have you been an agent?" Like 9 months or something, like something weird. I'm like, I don't know what I said, because I don't think it was that long. I was like, yeah, about that. He's like, "I bet you don't even know what this light switch does." And he's like playing with all these light switches. I'm like, dude, I've never been in this house. Like the misconceptions people have too about you being a realtor. They'll be like, "Oh, how many times have you shown this house?" I'm like, "What, today, right now." It's like, just people always have misconceptions about you, what you do, what real estate is, how you get paid, like,
Oh, yeah.
so just kind of fake it till you make it, build those relationships with other agents on, if you're on a team or in your brokerage, and like, make sure you have someone who can be your lifeline if you don't know what an ROC is at 10.
I think that's great, and I think like, it's maybe less even faking it, it's, everyone if you're dual career, somebody else is employing you. Somebody else is saying like, yes, this person at least, gets up and shows up on a consistent enough basis to maintain another form of employment. Like you have a value proposition in whatever has made you employable thus far in your life. And like just lead with that. Or if you're new and you've probably got more time than an agent that sells 100 homes. So you can dedicate more time to your clients, right? You pick an angle, like there's positivity in there, and then just like, say it loudly, and then maybe you'll believe it too. All right, what other questions do you guys have? Anything else that's burning questions? Comments?
Do either of you have coaches?
I was in productivity coaching for a while for my first year and a half, which was super helpful. If you're all of you guys are in your first year, I highly recommend productivity coaching. It was super helpful for me. But now,
No, I try and just find accountability on my team with various people at different points, like, hey, I'm doing this week. What are you doing? Like those sort of things. Because in our team structure, I have a team under me. So, me going to the people on my team saying, this is what I'm doing. What are you doing? Also number one, gives me ideas on things I can do, and number two, it, you know, it's helping me to like make sure I'm staying on top of things, so.
Great question. So I have a question. I guess my question is for Sara. So when you were running the daycare business, did it ever affect your real estate business? Let's say somebody didn't want to work with you just because you're busy during the day and they don't want somebody that busy.
I think at the point where I got licensed, I was only running that part-time. So like, you know, I think being available every other day at least is enough. Like, it's enough for people, especially now that we aren't in such a crazy time. Like, yeah, if somebody wants to see it today during the day, I'm like, oh, I can't today, but I can tomorrow, or I can on Thursday, or, you know, whatever. Like, again, back to like just meeting their objections with an answer or a solution to whatever's going on. But no, I mean, and now like I think about it, it's like, it was such a blip before I kind of got out of that. But it's the same with kids and stuff. Like, sometimes there's just hard limits, like, okay, I can never be anywhere at 8:30 a.m. So we're gonna have to do it at 9, or, you know, like, there's ways to move mountains when you need to, and then there's some ways that mountain just is there and it's gonna be there. So, you know, if you have a good enough relationship with your client, they're gonna understand, and they're, you know, I think Lindsey said it, you know, she had someone who, it's like, okay, clearly they just want to get into a house.
Yeah.
And those are the kind of relationships you don't, I don't want to say you don't want, but that you don't want to overextend yourself to accommodate somebody who is just looking for you to open a lockbox and not really valuing what all that you're going to do for them.
Yeah, I think it's a two-way street. Like, you're trusting them with your time, and just as much as they're trusting you. So if they're not going to respect that you have another appointment or something of that nature, you kind of have to evaluate how important is this person to you, and do you even want them in your mental headspace at this point? I've had one like that I was just like, this isn't working for me. It's taking too much on my headspace. It's making me go crazy. And you have to really evaluate what's right for you in that situation. But if there's someone that can't understand that you have an appointment or work, you know, it might just not be the right
It's not
relationship.
you, it's me.
Yeah. Yeah,
You know,
yeah,
Especially if I'm working with somebody late.
Yeah.
Let's say, like,
Yeah.
they magically like showed up at. the
Yeah.
pizza shop, or they bumped
Yeah.
into me at the road, or.
Yeah.
And they-
Yeah. I think so that, you know, if we're talking about a buyer who wants to get into a house, again, with problem solving and flexibility, like, you might have a seller who has the whole time blocked off that they want to see it. So it's not even on you, it's on situation out of your control. Like, the showing's blocked that time, we can only get in after 3 or whatever. Like, you just have to work around it and explain those things to them. And I think knowledge, you know, people just want to know, they want the answer, they want to know, and just give them as much as you can.
So we had a question in the chat, this should be a fun one. What's your average time per deal? How's the time rate?
Does data analysis.
Yeah. I do some spreadsheets.
Yeah.
I honestly have no idea.
Okay, I've sold like 80-ish houses. I've had one client who, we saw one house and they bought it. We saw exactly one house. They're like, yeah, it's good enough. So, that was really easy. Yeah. And I've had other clients who, I think I had one, I'm trying to think of my longest one. We worked on and off for about 2.5 years. And it would be like hardcore for 3 weeks, and then we're not ready for 6 months or whatever. So I mean, it's hard, and those are hard because you're like, I think this is the one, I think this is it, I think we're there, and then they hate it, or like they're like, oh, the bedrooms are too small, and you're like, oh my God, you're champagne taste on your beer budget is not working out here. So, you know, what, if you're asking like, once you get under contract, I mean, I guess it all depends on how complex the sale is. Is there a home inspection that you have to be present at? How, you know, a lot of this job I relate to, we are kind of second in line to therapists in terms of dealing with like mental health and processing. And if you're dealing with like a husband and wife, it's usually one of them's like on board and like ready to roll, and the other one's got some hesitation, and then you're kind of trying to marriage counsel your way to an agreement with them. And it just really all depends. I've spent a lot of time with people, and I've spent no time with people, and they're like, yeah, let's go, just tell me what to do, tell me what's next. I'm like, okay, let's roll. So
I couldn't tell you how long I spent on per transaction. I would say they're trying to get at like how much time I spend on real estate in general.
It's for planning purposes.
I would say 15 to 20 hours a week, more or less, depending on the week, but generally around that.
Yeah. When you, and you know, you bring up this range of clients, right? And some people are, you know, one shop, great. And then there are people who are, you've worked with for 3 years, right? Having more clients makes it more likely that you're gonna have that full range, which makes it more likely that you're always gonna have deal flow. Right? So like, yes, NAR says that the average buyer takes 50 hours for the full transaction. Some do, some don't. The average, so I mean, some take 2 hours and some take 100. So I think, you know, you guys put it, like everything in real estate, it depends. Great, well, for everybody on the Zoom, and then you guys, we're gonna pressure you with our eyeballs, but one thing we've started to focus on as we go through these trainings is taking ahas and then really implementations, right? So what's something you feel like you learn tonight that you go take tomorrow, build into your schedule, take action on, build a script around that you can then leverage to move the ball forward for your business. So if you're on Zoom, drop it in the chat. If you're one of these gentlemen in the room, pressure's on for answers.
Yeah, I would try. I really like the time blocking, but I don't do the getting the things you want to do, so I'm anyway for a long time.
Yeah.
I play volleyball with a client, and so it's really hard to juggle kind of the days where I have to cook and come home from work and still go to a game and then get back and still take my dog for lunch. So making sure that those days are my off days, but I can work.
I think my biggest takeaway is just, getting out there and, you know, getting face to face, rubbing elbows with people, volunteering at church, volunteering for, you know, your school or whatever. I feel like I say no to a lot of that stuff because I'm saying no so I can focus on real estate. And it didn't occur to me until tonight that saying yes to that stuff is focusing on real estate.
yeah,
So
absolutely.
that was kind of my light bulb moment.
That's awesome. And sometimes it's fun. Yeah.
That's huge.
That's the way, like, I said no to so many things that I'd like to do, because I love people, I love building relationships, and man, I can't volunteer for this thing and meet all these people and have fun, because I gotta focus on my business. What am I doing? That's huge.
That's awesome. Yeah.
That's awesome. So what's the next thing that you're gonna say yes to that you've otherwise denied yourself?
I definitely think, like, I'm very involved in my church from like a music standpoint, like I love to sing in church, but I've never looked at like serving communion or, you know, volunteering for youth stuff. I mean, there's so many different things that are coming in front of so many people, so I mean, that's something that I can do this week, you know.
Awesome.
Well, in those situations, I mean, I would have to imagine with the PTA you heard about probably before even the kids that like mom and dad are moving, right? Or, you know, something like that. I mean, if you're youth groups, community boards, things like that, like. You know, we talked about it earlier, but. You know, there's 6 reasons people buy or sell real estate: birth, death, marriage, divorce, promotion, and demotion. Half those are good, half are bad. Either way, it's when you're in relationship with people that you get access to that information, right?
The one other thing, just because you're talking about ideas and stuff, is when I was on a certain committee with the early childhood PTA, it was Sunshine, and you would set up a meal train for moms who just had babies. So I set those up, but then I would put together a little gift basket for the mom and drop it off and just put on my back of my business card, like, the first years are hard, like, take care of yourself too, with like a dry shampoo and some tea and some chocolates, and like do things out of kindness, but like in the back of your mind, be like, it's my business, like you are making someone remember you for something that you did for
Yeah.
them.
It was just today, I was talking with Wesley, the coach,
Mhm.
and I go to a gym 5-6 days a week. And I have,
We can tell.
I have a couple, yeah. But I have probably 100 friends at my gym, none of them know I have real estate.
Make t-shirts with your name and
Well,
phone number on
So
them,
like, I was.
wear them to the gym.
You were talking about events, right? So I'm thinking I could probably do like a water bottle thing with my information on it, or like,
Workout class.
yeah, just like as people are walking in, I'm like asking them free.
Sweat towels. There
Stupid like that, yeah.
you go.
Valentine?
I took a lot, there's a lot on us, but I don't know, there's a lot on my mind. I'm also like trying to figure out how can I, use my business to promote also my real estate business, but at the same time, I deal with a lot of people that are just waiting for their food and they don't want to, hear anything about anything else other than their pizza, and especially that you're giving it to them and they can smell it and they can just get out. But it's, I feel like it's a good idea to start talking to the customers, real estate and.
Even just a sign, like, you trust me with your pizza, trust me with your house, like just even that.
Or you might maybe have regulars. and
Yeah,
people
I'm sure
that know you.
regulars.
It's like,
Be a casual conversation.
yeah, and they might not buy or sell, but I guarantee you, like, they like you. Half of the reason they probably are regulars is because they like you, right? The other half, they like the food, so like. If they don't know, then nobody knows. If the regulars know, then they can tell everybody.
I think so too, what you were saying earlier about like, what if they find out that I own a pizza place, right? Like, if that's me. And there's someone that is doing well enough for themselves to own a business. They must have their stuff together,
Mhm.
and that, like, that might not be a bad thing, right?
Yeah.
Like, oh, you thought this was my only,
Yeah.
like, this was my only venture? I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do this, maybe, I'm gonna just.
Yeah, use it as an asset. They're only gonna think what you think of it. So if you speak highly of it like that, then they will too.
I would probably trust you more.
Yeah.
With a home sale or purchase, knowing that you.
Yeah.
You also run your business.
Yeah.
Sure.
I don't live in Lakewood, but I imagine there's a lot of also community type events where maybe you could donate pizzas or be there with a little pizza stand or, stuff like that.
I can do those, but it was never about real estate.
Well, now it can be.
Yeah.
Make it about real estate. Yeah.
Meltdown.
A couple from the chat, just for everybody. Jill Brown said, manifest what you want. She said she didn't buy a yard sign until her first year in. As soon as she bought the yard sign, she got a listing. So, like, it's just, if you want to be a listing agent, you introduce yourself as a listing, right? Just because you're new doesn't mean that you have to be a buyer's agent. Jasmine says establish business hours so they won't burn out. I love that too. Like occasionally I'll call an agent, I'll get their voicemail and they'll say like, business hours are from, noon to 9 or whatever. And it just, whether or not you can text back at 9:01 or if you take a call at 10:30, it's like, no one's leaving here tonight calling their doctor, expecting them to somebody to pick
No
up.
other
be able to
businesses.
schedule- Yeah, or any other business. But it's an interesting framework and mindset. Small conversations count as lead generation. Absolutely. Talk about real estate, and then be creative with time management, even with a busy schedule. So, I like that. Like it a lot. Any other remarks for the good of the order? Or any?
Do you have a takeaway?
Oh, yeah.
Megan?
What's your take?
I do really like what you mentioned, like, Sarah, and Facebook and our team before that, not only are you having your own real estate business, but you can learn once you're successful in real estate to have other ancillary businesses, one being totally and partnership.
Such a great point, such a great plug, but it is like, and Lindsey brought it up about Bold. Bold is coming back. Bold is back in January here in Northeast Ohio. It's a great 8-week program, but which Bold stands for Business Objectives, Life by Design. But it is funny, like the same things that apply in any business apply to your real estate business. And if your profit share is one of those as well. I mean, as you became more intentional about it, did you have more success with it?
Yeah. I'm working on a few people right now that, having conversations. One of my neighbors, she's about to have a baby, but I'm like, hey, when you're ready, let's have that play date and chat. And she's like, yeah, I want to do this. I'm ready. Like, have a couple other things and people coming up too. So it's, just showing people how much you like the job too, like, oh, I love it. I love that I can be home in the morning and get my kids on the bus, or I love that, I don't have to go and sit in an office all day and I can work from my house or my car or whatever. Like, there's so many things, especially, post pandemic, if we can say that now. I hope we can say that now, like there's so many more unconventional work methods that I think that, it's good. People are interested in that.
Yeah, absolutely. And technology that we leverage. I mean, just think about like what we're able to do. We don't need wet signatures, right? Like 10 years ago, the idea of being a for agent and like driving all over God's green acre to get a signature at 7:30 at night. Now you just dot with it. Crazy,
Pretty,
right?
yeah.
But those are things that are leveraged, right? And that's funny. You can put that in a buyer presentation, like, hey, oh, by the way, we do all of it, everything digitally, right? Like they don't know that that's not just the industry standard now, but that could be part of your value proposition. So that's great. Well, thank you guys so much for taking time out of a Monday evening, taking time to share and care with the rest of the crew. I know that everyone got a lot out of it, a lot of good comments in the chat. So let's give a round of applause. Appreciate you guys helping us out. We know that there's a lot of agents that start with us dual careers, so being able to protect this community as a way to support this growth. Huge. Couldn't do it without it.
Awesome. Thanks for having us.